It's time for Real Talk with Cindy Barber. Stay tuned for conversation and information from her special guest. Now sit back and relax and enjoy Real Talk with Cindy Barber.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk with Cindy. We are here. We are here. Please share and tag and let others know that we're on. I would love to see pastors, musicians, and leaders come on tonight. We have a very excellent panel that's here tonight. They're ready to go. And we have an interesting topic on tonight, the church musician. So I need you to tag and share and let others know that we are on. Also, if you're interested in having your event to be able to be used on this platform for me to share it, please DM me or send me an email to ms.cindybarber@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to be a financial blessing, as many of you have, please sow a seed to Cindy Barber at Cash App, $ Cindy's Keys. We'll be glad to take your money for the ministry, and we thank God for all of you that are coming on. Please tag and share and let others know that we're here. Also, it'll be a time for questions and answers that you may have, especially questions that you may have. They'll be available to discuss them with you, to share with you. I am so excited about this topic on tonight. Someone has been asking me about doing a show on church musicians, things that you should know. And we're excited about that. And I'm looking forward to this amazing panel. We have some expertise, musicians that are here and pastors that are here from the industry, as well as church musicians also. So I'm looking forward to seeing. I see you coming on. Those of you that are on YouTube, welcome. Please let me know the city, state, or country you are joining me from on tonight. Please let me know city, state, or country you're joining me from on tonight. And I am going to bring them on in a few minutes. So please tag and share and let others know that we're here. I see many people coming on. Please let me know the city, state, or country where you're joining us from. Hope everyone had an amazing weekend, Sunday and Saturday. The weather has been nice. It's been hot, and I thank God for it. I see you coming on. Please let me know city, state, or country where you are joining me from. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Lynn Reed, thank you so much for joining us from Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much. Real Talk with Cindy. We are here. We are here. Live and living color. We are here. Thank you so much for all of you that have supported Real Talk with Cindy. And if you would like to catch up and look at some of the videos that I have, they're on my YouTube channel, which is cindybarber.tv. Please go to my YouTube channel and support. Also subscribe to that channel as well. Thank you so much for many of you that have done so. Bless you, Tamika Furby, Philly Baby. Bless you. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us on tonight. Thank you so much. But I'm going to bring my guests on. And we have Pastor Troy Chambers Pastor William Oatman and Richard Tubbs Smith. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Praise the Lord,
I just want
everybody.
to, yes, it's good to see everybody. We just want to get started with our topic and discussion on tonight, as the people are definitely coming on. There's so many people that I see that are coming on, and we want to get started. But I want to kind of let people know what you do. So briefly, just kind of share a little bit who you are and what you do and what you're doing now and what you have done. I'm going to start with Richard Tubbs Smith. Let us know where you're from and what you're doing and what you have been doing.
Well, praise the Lord, everybody out there in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube land. Pleasure to meet you. My name
Yes.
is Richard Tubbs Smith. Most people know me as Tubbs, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever comes to mind, that's what you can call me. I'm not a respecter of titles and names. I'm just a willing vessel. You can call me
That's right.
brother or young man, whatever comes to mind. So
That's right.
I'm a musician by uh, trade, calling,
Mm-hmm.
uh, practice, whatever
Mm-hmm.
type of title you want to give it. But that's what I
Mm-hmm.
do. That's what I love. I feel like that uh, profession chose me because I wanted to be a
Mm-hmm.
basketball player. But
Really?
while I
Okay.
was on the court one day, I heard the Lord say, "You gonna have to choose, brother. You want to play basketball or you want to do music?" And I said, "Well, I think I got a much better chance in music." So I gave basketball up, and thank God I'm still here.
Still here.
So I've been traveling all over the world with a lot of gospel artists, and I still stay true to my home churches. My father's
Mm-hmm.
church, Morning Star Church of Pleasantville, which is right outside of Atlantic City. I'm there every Saturday if I
Mm-hmm.
can help it. And then I'm at
Right.
Agape Family Worship Center in Rahway, New Jersey,
Oh,
every
okay.
Sunday. And
Wow.
yes, I have plenty miles on my car,
I
but
see.
I invest in my car so I can make it to all the rehearsals and Bible studies and revivals and
Yes.
woo, meetings. I
Yeah.
keep on going and give God praise.
That's right.
Amen.
Name a couple of artists that you play for.
If you insist. Uh, I will be traveling to World Changers. I
Mm.
believe that's Pastor Creflo Dollar's church in
Yes.
Atlanta, Georgia, on
Mm-hmm.
Thursday with Brian Courtney Wilson.
Okay.
Uh, I am always doing things for Erica Campbell. We
Mm-hmm.
go way back. I was with her when she first started, and
Oh,
I
okay.
was playing with Mary before that,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
I made the cut to continue when they kind
Right.
of split apart and did their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also worked with Dietrich Haddon
Mm-hmm.
and uh, let me see one more. Whew. Oh, Pastor Bubby Fan. I'm honored to do
Okay.
work with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Wow. That's amazing. Amazing.
God be praised.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping your roots, staying in the
Yes,
church. That's good. It's
amen.
really good. Now, Pastor Oatman, share with us who you are and what you do.
I'm from the great city of Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Okay.
Um, I but I currently live in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's been a blessing. My music. I've done music full time since 2006. So I
Mm-hmm.
did full time ministry, serving um, for a few churches here in North Carolina. Down
Okay.
here, they hire you as full time because it's just that type of church. It's intense. Whether it's whoever, whatever affirmation they're with, it's a lot that comes with it.
Yeah.
So I've also been able to produce a
Mm-hmm.
few projects. but really just I've been enjoying music ministry. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the pastoral thing is just starting, so I can't tell you much about that yet. But I'm still, I just left the church maybe a couple of years ago, serving for 16 years. Was
Wow.
able to travel and work with some artists. And I had a little break. Now I just joined another ministry in their music department, great ministry here in Wilmington.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to it because it's definitely different. So I'm excited about what's to come in that, but also in growing as a pastor, you
Yeah.
know, one day at a time. I'm not trying to, take it all
Mm-hmm.
on, because I still love music. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Wow.
who
That's
I am.
great. And you're from outside of Atlantic City, right?
Yes, ma'am. Matter of fact, me and Brother Tubbs are kind of like from the same place. We grew up in the
Right.
same.
Right.
We frequent, like they say now, see, we frequent at the same spots.
Right.
But I'm still dedicated. No matter,
Mm-hmm.
like he said, my brother said, no matter all the traveling, everything I've been able to do, I've been able to be in the studio with the Pace sisters, produced one of Durana's Pace's, her first EP.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. So the artist that I work with has been Bishop Leonard Scott. Led a song on my very first major record I put out. He led the song that I wrote. So it's been a fun
Okay.
ride, but I've
Yeah.
stayed connected to my Sunday morning.
Right.
Like, and it's been a blessing for me.
That's good. That's good. So glad to have you tonight. Now, Pastor Troy Chambers,
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
share
ma'am.
a little bit about your resume.
Oh, I'm the old guy. Um, uh, I have been doing music full time for, I'll say, since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done everything under the sun from, I guess, in the church arena, from just being a musician. I started out as a drummer, became an organist,
Mm-hmm.
started playing for different groups, got opportunities that God would just allow to line up. Got opportunities to be a band director or a musical director. Grew into opportunities to travel with artists over the years, with a few.
Yeah.
Um, and even now, not as much traveling. I can't really do so. I'm pastoring a church in West Philly, New Testament Church of Christ.
Wow.
Um, we're now halfway through the second year in
Oh, wow.
process, and it's been a good experience.
Yeah.
But the balance of all of it is just building healthy culture and environment there.
Mm-hmm.
Still, what I do um, as my profession is still music. Outside
Yeah.
of that, I lean a lot more towards production
Yeah.
that allows me to do things during the week.
Mm-hmm.
Anything coming, I
Mm-hmm.
will be part of the team that will be recording. Patrick Lundy is recording on the 21st of
Oh,
this
yeah.
month at the
Yeah.
Dorsey Convention.
Yes.
So
That's
uh,
good.
Cedric Thompson is leading that out, and I've been given the opportunity to be a part of that team.
Yeah.
Still doing production with James Hall presently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing production with Bubby Fan. There's something that's coming out down the
Mm-hmm.
line with him, and even working on a friend of mine who also serves at my church named Eddie Worley.
Mm-hmm.
He's an actual new artist, so working
Mm-hmm.
on some things that are just coming up the pike in the
Yeah.
very near future.
Wow. That's good. Wonderful. Wonderful. And everybody's still grounded in the church. That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's get right into our discussion. I know some people have some questions. We want to talk about the church musician. So let's dive into it. The responsibility of a church musician. What is the responsibility that you see of a church musician? Is it different from a director of music? So let's kind of talk about that. I'm gonna start with Tubbs. Let's talk about the church musician. Is it different from the director and their responsibility?
I would say yes, because the musician compared to the director, the musician is more of a follower and a support and
Mm-hmm.
bass
Mm-hmm.
position. The director is more giving direction and orders and setting things up so that other people can execute the vision that they have.
Yes. Okay, William.
I would agree as well. Everybody has a role. Really, the musician follows the musical director, minister of music.
Mm-hmm.
They focus on their part. And if they do it well, which includes learning the material, being to rehearsal on time, being to service on time, if they do that in most major churches, they are fulfilling their initial requirements. The spiritual, if they're just there at their instrument, facilitating what they're supposed to do, that's what it is.
Right. Now, Troy, what are the expectations of a church musician? What are the expectations you think of a church musician?
I think it depends on the church, and it depends on the leadership of the church. And if I will be very candid without being messy, I will have to say that some churches just want a musician. They really are not concerned about your spiritual life, not concerned about your personal life. They're really concerned about whether you can do what they need to make their service work. And so there is the church that desires that. And outside of that, as long as your personal life is not interfering with whatever they're doing, they're going to leave all the other things alone. There is another church that wants leadership from a musician. There's some churches that want a musician that can not only play, but that can actually sing, that can lead worship, a musician that can also teach choirs. And they want that built in that person. Some people have larger teams, so they have different positions. And as you were talking earlier, they have a music director, and then they will have other band members. Some people actually want someone who not only is skilled musically, but actually has a heart for ministry and really would take on the heart of the church, will actually get aligned to the church's vision and really become a part of the church's ministry. So it just varies from place to place.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Now, what do you feel that organists face in churches as far as their duties? What do you feel that organists, face, organists or keyboard player? What do you feel that they face? Tubbs, what are some of the obstacles and some of the ups and the downs that they kind of face?
Well, I would say number one is the stigma of being an organist or a keyboardist. You're automatically assumed to be a creep or a dog or the one that's going to sleep with all the choir members or try to mess with all the members in the church. So that's the first thing you got to deal with. And then secondly is knowing the pastor and all of his moods and his idiosyncrasies and his changes, and you got to know it like the back of your hand, or you'll be deemed as either not focusing or not in the spirit. And then lastly, I think you have to know a plethora of songs, because they don't look at the drummer or the bass player when somebody sings a random song from the 60s or something that just came out. They're looking at the organist and the keyboardist saying, "You don't know that? What are you doing during the week?"
Right.
So those are my top three.
That is so true. William?
I think relationship is one of the toughest in 2024 when you're dealing with musicians and the pastor. There's that relationship. It needs to be cultivated, and sometimes as a musician, the pastor wants the best. They want to seek out the best, and most times musicians are interviewing churches just like pastors are interviewing musicians. So in most local places, if a musician is going to a church, there's already a group of musicians that have already been talking So they already know what's going on at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off good. It starts off where the pastor's excited. It's a new person there. And then when that honeymoon period's over,
Yeah.
there's a I would say a divide between the pastor and the musician, their relationship. Whether you're a musician, a minister of music, whatever you want to call yourself, if that relationship with that pastor is not tight, that is a major challenge, because sometimes it can be a competition. Sometimes, like Tubbs was saying, if you're not in sync with the pastor, the only way that you can get in sync is to spend time with the pastor. And the pastor, you got to go through 4 elders and 5 deacons to get to the pastor. There's never going to be I would say, a great working relationship on Sunday morning, which everybody sees a disconnection on Sunday between the musicians and the pastor. So I believe that's one. Number 2 is the fight and the temptation to doing secular gigs versus church. Because what ends up happening is a lot of musicians, I'm down here in North Carolina, so I deal with the North Carolina, the Raleigh, the Atlanta, all these areas. The Atlanta musicians are on tour all the time. So they always have filling musicians. And the pastors understand that. So the musician can be gone for 6 months, and there's a filling musician. As soon as that musician comes back, that person's gone.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's that the turnover rate. And when it comes to the musicians and the temptation of them seeing, well, I can get paid more at a gig on Saturday night. And they do those gigs Friday, Saturday night, and then they come to church and they don't have nothing to get. So those are, to me, the 2 issues, major things that musicians deal with.
Right. Pastor Troy?
I've been listening to both. Like I'm on the other side of this thing watching with everybody else. I definitely agree with the different perspectives. I would also say one of the challenges, let me add 2 more, and I think we still wouldn't have exhausted everything. But I'll say one of the challenges of musicians sometimes is more so than wanting to be pastored, almost wanting to be fathered. And that's a thing that we don't talk about a lot. Sometimes you will think that you're looking for closeness with the leadership, and you may get that depending on the size of the church. Or if it's healthy, you still may not get it, but you may get a connection through someone that is part of his cabinet. As long as the connections are healthy and the directives are clear, the communication is clear. Not to say that your pastor should be avoiding you at all costs, but he may not be taking you out to lunch. He may be dealing just because of the size of what he has to deal with, and that will be okay. But for some musicians, there's a challenge with it. And I'll say, even connected into this, one of the challenges that musicians may deal with personally is, hey, am I here for work, or can I consider this home? Is there a place where I can do both? And sometimes in defense of the musician, sometimes the places that will take care of you well are also the places that will abuse you the most. They're also the places that don't really care about you. And it makes it so much that, some people, because they're like, I need this to live, they make the choice to take the job. And for me, that's the same as doing a secular job. There's no difference between working for a church that you don't feel that you're connected to and working with the artist out in mainstream or going outside of the church environment. It's all the same thing. So there's always the question of, do you have somewhere that you can call home? And then if it's not a place that can take care of you, can you figure out how to exercise your gift in a way, or open your mind that allows you to utilize your gifts in ways that will open financial doors and still submit to a place that you can call home, even if they can't pay you? Or they can't pay you the amount that you're worth. So these are things that people have to grapple with, especially in these environments.
Oh, wow. This is good because I have so many questions I'm going to ask you. We're honored to have Pastor David Wright from New York and
Bless
also New
him. Bless
Jersey.
him.
Good,
Good
bro.
to see you, Pastor. Good to see
So,
you.
conversation.
Someone's making a statement. I guess a question too. We are a small church, do not have a musician. We are using tracks. But as Mr. Chambers said, our pastor and myself, as the worship leaders, looking for someone who has a passion for the ministry. How hard is it to find someone to have the passion for the ministry? I know it's hard. Um, what should pastors look for in that musician as far as the passion and the servitude to stay there? And on the flip side of that too, there are some musicians that need to be under a covering. Not some. All musicians should be under a church covering, under a pastor. Many of them are
Okay.
not. And I think that at this point, we should really, the pastor should be able to talk to that musician and find out what church you attend. Are you attending a church? Do you need a church home? And talk to them to find out if, this will fit if you don't have it. But a lot of times we're using the gift, but we don't care about the soul of the musician. And we want to talk about that as well. So, what are your thoughts on that as far as musicians not having a church home and pastors not really reaching out to them? They're more or less just because of their gift and their talent. That's what they see, but they don't see any further than that. And I know I'm talking to two pastors here, but I know you all are not like that because you're musicians. So if you could touch a little bit on that, because some people are wanting to know that. Tubbs, I want to start with you.
Well, all right. Woo. I would say, woo. What to look for in a musician as a servant or one who has a heart for ministry is to see his motives and check his experience.
Mm,
If he doesn't have any longevity in any churches, that's going
hmm.
to show his dedication to your church.
Yes,
If he doesn't, care about prayer and Bible study and the heart of the pastor, he's not gonna all of a sudden care about your church because
right.
uh, because you hired him. And just take a look at his or her fruit as Christians and children of God. Do
Hmm.
they have an essence of a believer and someone that wants to serve God through music and ministry, or
Hmm.
is music just something they do and they don't really care for church and spirituality?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Pastor Troy.
Like everything that was said, there's something that came across the screen from Pastor Wright that said, grow yours in house.
Yes.
And it is true that I came up in an era where there were youth in the church and they were excited about those things that would they would be drawn to. I was excited about music.
Right.
That's what drew my attention in church. So, sometimes it would require some more mentoring. And
Mhm.
if you're courageous enough not to try to keep up with the rest of the world that says this is what you need for church to be effective, you're courageous
Mhm.
enough not to do that and to
Mhm.
simplify where you are and
Mhm.
say, really, church is about the church, which is the people. And
Mhm.
the job of being a church is to foster healthy thinking, healthy believing,
Mhm.
healthy faith people. And we'll work with what we have and grow
Mhm.
as God allows. You may get some children that are not like the guy that you went down the street, but they
Mhm.
show some promise or gifting. You could pull on a Tubbs and say,
Yeah.
hey, do you give lessons? I have a young
Right.
man that's showing a little promise. Do you want to check him out and see what his capabilities are? I have a young lady.
Right.
And even if the mentoring can't happen in-house, I'm thinking you can find creative ways to do that. The other thing
Wow.
is to uh, really like know where your church is, where they're not, and don't make it that your priority is to keep up with what seems to be popular or effective on the
Mm-hmm.
outside.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, where my church is, I did not inherit a church that was just busting out at the seams. It
Yes.
took a hit during the pandemic, and we're at a
Mm-hmm.
rebuild process. So,
Right.
although I pastor and I fully pastor, I also play at my church. And I have an older gentleman, David Winslow, who serves and plays and helps different
Mm-hmm.
things. But I'm active in the department just because it's a need. If I couldn't do that, we would do
Mm-hmm.
tracks. And even though I'm the musician that everybody knows, I'm not above doing that if that's
Yeah.
what keeps my church environment pure. I don't
Right.
want to just grab something at the sake of contaminating the purity of what's being built.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's so true. Growing from in-house musicians growing up, you don't see it as much. Some churches have a lot of them. You know, they're sitting around waiting, especially drums. They're sitting around waiting or they're watching. Also, Professor Craig Hayes says hello to everyone. He's watching as well. Also, Professor Jeffrey LaValle is watching. Also, he's watching. Now let's talk about salary,
Ooh.
about income at the church. I'm gonna start with Pastor William Oatman. Share a little bit about that. Let's dive into that. And also, if anybody's watching and you have questions that you want to ask this guest, this is please do so. Pastors, I see many of you that are watching. If you have questions or comments, suggestions, please let us know. Okay, Pastor Oatman.
Well, when I first started, um, I started as just a normal musician. I never, to be honest, and I've been blessed to do full time. I
Mm-hmm.
never came to a pastor or a church with a demand for an amount. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why is because I'm not a gigger. Like if I'm gonna be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if I'm there to serve under you, I've already done my research. And I expect your character to be at the level where you should know the price of what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we talk about it, but I don't come in. You know, some people say I can't do it unless I get this. Can't do it
Right.
unless I get this. I just never had that mentality, and that's why I was able to serve in ministries for a long time, is because it became about the ministry, and they did their part. You know,
Mm-hmm.
certain ministries that required more, especially the one that I can't was at for 16 years. I had to maneuver my whole life around that ministry,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they paid well, but the cost of that was when there was a funeral, I was there. If something needed to be fixed at the church, I was there.
Yeah.
You know, my
Yeah.
schedule, my whole life had to be locked in with that ministry, and
Right.
I did that. And I did it. Um, I had no problems doing it. When I wanted to kind of get outside of that, I took a
Mm-hmm.
step back, and then I did a temporary position.
Mm-hmm.
But I really feel like certain requirements. You can't demand so much if you're not willing to give. You can't say I want top dollar and one. And I know everybody's this is stigma. I know everybody says it, but you can't demand a full salary and you can't play in all your keys. If you're demanding a salary that you don't know the music of the church,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you got to be careful and manage your expectations and be
Mm-hmm.
honest with the pastor. Let them know your limitations. Because if
Yeah.
you go in there, and I've been a part of that, where you go in and you're too zealous, you say you can do these things, and then that expectation it's not matched. Then you're sitting in somebody's office and they're meeting with you, trying to figure out, well, what's going on? We hired you for this, and we're not getting this.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, I'm not gonna get into that transpose thing tonight. I'm not doing it, but it's a mentality thing. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you should not ministry. Know your worth, but
Yeah.
also know you're going to get more blessings. And I say this by locking in somewhere. I thought about what Pastor Troy Chambers said. I want to get back to that. This morning, I felt a lot of my musician friends. What would happen if they died and they're playing at 4 different churches? Who will serve the family? You think about it. I have friends that are right now literally playing on Sunday morning at 3 different churches, but have never committed to one church.
Wow.
They can't say they're members of one church. So then when you die, what happens? Somebody's got to figure out who's going to service you. Or when you get sick. See, there's other things, benefits that come with locking in somewhere and being faithful. You have a family, you have a church family. And I'm gonna give you an example. I just joined another church, a prominent church in this town, and the pastor, the reason what turned me on to them was he didn't care about my ability to play. He cared about me.
Yeah.
At the office, and it was 30, 40 minutes of him. How are you doing? How's your family doing? So that after doing this for so long, I'm like, wow, I'm not a robot. You're not treating me like a jukebox. I'm a human being. So yes, that did. And for me to come in, I didn't jump on the organ or keyboard. He said, come sit in the service. I know you gotta do Sunday, but come sit in the service. And that's where it all came together for me. So I just feel like you gotta practice. You gotta be careful when it comes to money and salaries, and some churches can't do full time.
Yeah,
can't afford that. You don't expect it.
Right.
So that's just where I'm at.
Now, Pastor Wright says, for some reason, some of my comments are not coming through, so I'm looking on another platform. Pastor Wright says, how much, Pastor Oatman? How much?
Oh, you want the dollar amount?
He wants a dollar amount.
Oh God, that is rough.
This is some good tea.
He said, how much? Also, Bill Smith says musicians need to be selective of where they minister. Another person says, Kenya, she says, we need people that see the musicians as a person and care about the well-being of the soul. And Bill Smith also says, all money is not good money.
Yes.
That's
because
very
you
true.
lose years.
We're about to add 4 more squares.
Right. You know what?
Right.
You have families, you have wife, you have a husband, whoever, your children, and they are a part of. They take the hit when it comes to the top dollar. Being in a position full time is a lot of demand, and your family becomes second, and that's not good either. So just know what you're getting into before you demand all this money.
Professor Jeffrey White has a question. He said, what is your opinion regarding musicians who do club work on weekends and church on Sunday?
Club work like wedding band?
Professor Jeffrey, he said club work like weddings, or you mean actually in a club? So type that in so we will know how to answer this. And someone also said, that's right, all money is not good money. Tamika Furby says, musicians have to hear God and be led where they are to serve. And musicians definitely are in. He said, Jeffrey says, no, like nightclubs.
I didn't know they still do that. Okay.
Pastor David Wright says. Pastor David Wright says,
I got you, Jeff.
For Jill Scott.
Oh, okay.
Okay, who's going to answer?
I'm not answering.
I'll jump in the hot seat.
Okay.
I've never played for a secular artist, but I've actually seen 2 sides of the pendulum. I've seen a large number of people that say, hey, this is just work. This is just what I do for a living. Church don't
Mm-hmm.
pay me enough. This does pay my bills. I still believe in God, X, Y, and Z. They say all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
If I pull something that Tubbs actually said very early in this, the one thing that I pay attention is not to what people profess, but it is to what they produce.
Mm-hmm.
We all produce fruit, whether we believe it or not. And the
Mm-hmm.
truth is for some, for a lot that proclaim that what they're doing is just work and X, Y, and Z. There's things that do show up that show fruit that says otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get down to whether you should be playing for secular artists
Mm-hmm.
and then doing church. I'm not sure whether that's the real issue. It's, are you in a place where who you are is what you profess to be? It's the real question. I do
Mm-hmm.
know some guys, there's very few, but I know
Mm-hmm.
some guys that have played in the secular arena
Mm-hmm.
and it did not change who they were. They actually became the beacon of light in their environment. So I cannot make a blanket rule to say musicians shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. I will say you should really be careful to figure out who you are and then allow the rest of your life to align in a way that your yeses and nos are in alignment to your convictions.
Yes.
It's good.
Wow.
There's certain people that will play for certain secular artists, but they won't play for this artist because they're like, hey, I'm not trying to be attached to this,
Mm-hmm.
but the artist they're playing for is secular and they are following their conviction. They know who they are. They're grounded. They have done their
Mm-hmm.
homework and their research, and they are doing what they do. If we take
Yeah.
a biblical example for anybody who would think, man, that doesn't work, you have to remember that Joseph was made second in command in a land and a system that was not God fearing.
Mm-hmm.
He was made the second of command in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember that Daniel was given a lot of authority in
Mm-hmm.
Babylon. And you have to remember that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, we know them as Rashak, Meshach, and Abednego, they were given authority in areas and they never compromised their witness for the positions that they got.
Wow.
But that is not a majority. So
Yeah.
I will not make a blanket statement to say
To
you
say.
shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
or you should. I'll just say really know who you are and who you belong to and
Mm-hmm.
allow for that conviction to actually dictate your yeses and nos.
Wow.
And we have too many people that are not following a conviction. They're
Mm-hmm.
just saying because they heard it before and they
Right.
see other people. It's like, hey, I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
hell for this, but this is tearing you up.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I
Yeah.
know I'm not supposed to be in that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Y'all wouldn't be talking to me tonight. It
Right.
would be a different Troy out there, and I ain't gonna tell you what he would look like.
Right.
So there's a reason why I can't do it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. That's good. That's good. Someone says, I see many musicians changing the sound and words of the song and going to bars to get the bag and say, as long as I go to church and play, I'm okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. I think that's all around, and I
Yeah.
always bring balance since I'm in both seats
Mm-hmm.
because I see many pastors that preach the word and then do what they do, and
Right.
they're like, "Hey, as long as I'm still flowing and people are responding, you know." But there's a way that seems right.
Come
Right.
on.
At the end of the day, we're all going to have to answer for
Mm-hmm.
the choices that we make,
Right.
and you're not going to be able to say somebody else told me X, Y, and Z.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, as far as the salaries, as far as the pay, what do you think about musicians? Because there are some churches that really can't afford a musician financially, and there are some that can. What do you say that to that musician, that there is to that pastor, there's a church that is a good church, they have a good ministry, they're basically kind of starting out. What do you say to that pastor as far as, you know, he doesn't really have the income, Do you think that he could, maybe have a service or something in order to be able to give them something, or not, or give them something to say thank you? Tubbs, what are your thoughts on that when there's a small church that need a musician and really cannot afford to pay a musician? What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh-wee. I would definitely say try to do something. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
only offensive to musicians when we keep hearing, we can't pay you like we want to, but when our ship comes in, we're going to take care of you. And years go
Mm-hmm.
by, and pastor got a new car, and the deacons got new
Mm-hmm.
houses, and everybody's testifying, and they say, "Oh, look at the building, son. We went over the mark. God is blessing." And we're
Yeah.
still sitting there like, we've been getting $25 for 4 years now. I thought we were going to get a raise when things got better.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah,
Right.
just trust God, just trust God. So I think if
Mm-hmm.
they would try to find some type of way to compensate for their lack in the beginning, and then
Mm-hmm.
when things do get better, try to match the availability of funds, because we don't
Yeah.
want to take all the church funds and have them closed down because the musician had these very high standards, but
Right.
we don't want to be tricked anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Pastor Oatman?
I think nowadays there's 80 million trillion churches, right? So we got to get a little smart with this. Count the cost before you want to be the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Count
Mm-hmm.
the cost of what you really want to have. If you
Mm-hmm.
know you cannot afford a musician when you first start, new tracks, if you can play, be realistic. Don't
Yes.
jump out there to the point where, because what you're going to end up doing is you're just putting on a show. You're not really trying to effectively grow in ministry. That might not be the priority.
Mm-hmm.
If you have friends that do it, let them know what you can do up front. And if you can't do it, don't call them. Because
Yeah.
what ends
Mhm.
up happening is it becomes you're doing a service to raise money for musicians
Right.
versus growing in ministry if you're not in that place.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
think I think also when it comes to the gig, I really it's hard for me to answer that because I used to be so hard on that. I used to be hard, but I also know that we've had like when you are musicians, it's a brotherhood, sisterhood. We are all like a community, so you
Mm-hmm.
understand these people's personal things that they
Mm-hmm.
got going on. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
not as hard as I used to be because people are really trying to survive. They're trying to do the best that they can do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're trying to use the
Mhm.
gift that they have. But
Right.
Mhm.
like Pastor Chambers said, you got to be careful because you can't only expect to grow but so much because if you want this gift and you want the anointing, there's a price that comes with that. You have to do a sacrifice. Something has to give.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
But I can't
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
cancel my brothers and sisters out there that are doing that because one day, if I am so hard on them now, one day they might wake up and say, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore." And who's there? The person that judged them. So because I have a lot of musician friends,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I don't want to see because of how I feel. I don't want to impose that on someone else. Now I'll tell you if it's right or wrong or what I feel, but I don't want
Right.
to castrate you because you might change and say, "Hey, there's a well-known musician that everybody knows," and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
put this out there. All of you know this person. They passed away, and my biggest regret was before they passed, they called me and they needed me. They wanted to come see me, and I was so
Mm-hmm.
busy that I could not. I wanted them to come, but we just didn't make it work. They passed
Mm-hmm.
away. So when that happened, and I felt like it was one of my brothers that was struggling between both worlds,
Yeah.
I stopped judging. I'm like, okay, you got to do what you got to do, but just understand that if you want your gift to increase and you want God to really bless your gift in what we do, You
Mm-hmm.
got to sacrifice, you know. But as far as service is concerned, I think that you shouldn't start a church and you don't have a good budget. If you just can't pay, wait until you can, and then sure, like Tubbs said, make sure you give something as the church grows, because we've all seen that as well. It's upside down. The church will grow, the pastor will grow, everybody's growing, and the musician's still playing a beat up XP50 with keys that are broken. Something's wrong with it.
Yeah. Pastor Troy.
Okay. Let's say a few things that may seem a bit sacrilege, but coming from a mindset as I get older, even where I've served and the places I've served and what I've been afforded to receive. And I've been in storefront and I've been in mega. And all those experiences, they served me well. I will tell you, one of the fights that we have is that there is not a pay scale that is a rubric for all churches. There's not even a pay scale that's a rubric for all areas. When a pastor is trying to figure out what's fair, they have to hopefully have some friends that they can call and, you know, get some consensus and figure out what you're doing here. I've gotten phone calls where pastors will ask me, hey, what's fair for our ministry, you know, and I'll ask some questions. Hey, what do you need? What time your service starts? How long is your service? What will you need this person to do? For me to say that and to know that there's such a wide stance, and I've known musicians in my own timeline that would say, hey, to pay such and such $100, that's crazy in this day and time. And in my head, I'm saying it's crazy depending upon the situation.
Right.
It's not always crazy. We can't put those blanket statements on. And one of the things that I will say on the musician end is I can't expect top dollar from a small ministry that's asking me to give them an hour with no rehearsal.
That's true.
And no other obligations. This is not me being paid because I'm considered a star or whatever. It's not that type of thing. I know we live in a world now where in the larger churches, we'll trade worship leaders and musicians like it's basketball teams.
Yes.
And you'll see it. We'll post it. You'll see who's going to such and such as church. I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but everybody doesn't have that budget. So for the smaller churches, not going to beat you up. If your ministry is not in a place where it can do, like both brothers were saying, do what you can do. I will throw a wrench in this whole conversation to say that we can't relate ourselves to the old system. We're not Levites.
Right.
We have not recreated the Israel system. We've not created 12 tribes and 11 of them are paying money to take care of one that God said, I don't want you working. He did not say that to musicians. So if you're in a place where you're in between, you may need to start looking for a job.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Even if your skill sets are good and you're not finding a place that can pay you what you need to do what you need to do. Right. Or you also need to expand your mind to figure out how else your gift can actually make financial gain for you, whether that's music, sync licensing, whether that's looking into different avenues. Be creative. God didn't even put church in a box. They never took over the synagogue. They actually were worshiping at each other's houses. They were meeting outside at Solomon's porch.
Yes, that's right.
They left the other people in the synagogue like, we ain't messing with that. So like, if you're not finding what you need to find, you'll figure out what you need to do. Use your gift where you feel led to use it, and God will open doors. I had the same testimony as Oatman that I wasn't giving prices. And I'm gonna tell you, God was leveling up the things that I was doing because of my willingness just to serve in ministry. And I learned how to be treated because of how people were treating me.
Yeah.
Was I abused? Yes. Was I taken advantage of? Yes. But I didn't do this with the mindset of, now, if you call me for a funeral, a wedding, or a bar mitzvah, that's a whole nother conversation. No seances. I took that off the list. But outside of that, this ministry stuff, like you'll figure out where you really are. If you can't do what you can, and then I will say to the churches, don't expect everything for a little bit. If you can't do a lot, then give them the option of being able to just come in and play for the service. We'll send you the music. We only need you for this period of time. And there's some people that will make the decision because they see you helping, or they see you really doing what you can do. They're like, hey, I'm going to stay for their whole service. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure this is straight. I'm going to ask the pastor about this. And you start feeling that relationship like no one's trying to use anybody.
Yeah.
So as long as you feel that that's the case, this scale can be very much a sliding scale.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this isn't Bible, it's business.
Right.
It's really business.
It is.
This is not about the church is not commanded to pay musicians. The New Testament church never hired musicians.
Come on now.
I'm gonna get in trouble. They never hired us. So this is a business exchange. And if we're doing business like this, then figure out how to communicate in ways that are honest, and we'll figure out how that works.
Right. Yes. I see that I'm frozen on here, but you all can hear me?
Yes. I can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now,
deep in thought.
Yeah, real deep.
Such a Lord.
Tamika Furby says, my suggestion would be for new churches to change the time of their service. You can most likely find available musicians on Sunday afternoons. Jesus can still show up in the afternoon.
Hello.
That's what I've done. We have service at 3.
It's very true. Very true.
We have service at 3 because of that, and I think 11 o'clock is really oversaturated right now. And who's to say you have to start a church with the same template as all the other churches?
Right.
True. God is ever expansive. We are never going to reach where God is when it comes to technology and all this stuff.
That's right.
With it, be creative. Yes, do it at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever. At 11 o'clock it costs.
Right.
You call it prime time.
Yeah. 10
he said stay out of prime time.
Right. And that's true. That's very true. Now, Pastor David Wright said $200 an hour.
That's nice.
He wants the actual dollar amount.
That's good.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So if you have a service for an hour, then you know what your pay is going to be. Yep. And someone else says, widen your musical gaze.
That's good.
And then another musician says, nothing wrong with working a job.
Or
I know that's right too.
Like Pastor Chambers said, I got out the Marine Corps, and then I was just doing the full-time ministry. Then I opened up the studio. Then I opened up a business because I knew that tech was. So you just find other ways to be creative in that, because you can't take care of everybody on one church check, especially if you got 4, 5, 6 kids. That little check, whatever it's $200, $300, $400, $500, it's gonna be eaten up real quick. So you just gotta find other ways to make it, make other strengths.
Right. Absolutely. Very good. And you can't expect churches to give what they don't have.
Yes, ma'am. And
so you got to be willing to take and give, and if that's not the church for you, then you have to find someplace else to go. That's not the church for you. And nowadays it's been rough. Some people still have not, gotten back in place after this pandemic. It took a lot. Some churches didn't open up for maybe 2 more years after the pandemic. So
True.
financially, they just don't have it. Memberships have declined. The Bible speaks of us falling away. So we're seeing a lot of that. So musicians have to be patient also and just find their right fit, because there is a fit for them. And also with musicians, I'm hearing a lot of them smoking, weed, and telling people, they got medical, they do.
Medicinal.
Yes. And you can't take musicians. I dealt with that with the church in New Jersey, where they're taking the guys outside when the man's getting up to preach, the pastor's getting up to preach, and they doing their thing in the back. So those are things that pastors are dealing with, but yet they continue to have them stay there because they need that talent, they need that gift. But what about their soul?
Well, Miss Cindy,
So,
can I say something about the weed situation?
mhm.
Let's talk about the bigger issue when it comes to that.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say this because a year ago I lost my mother, and I couldn't work through that pain.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that we're using, they're coping mechanisms to a bigger issue, bigger problem. There are things that musicians are dealing with when it comes to depression, when it comes to being so used up and not poured back into.
Yeah.
A lot of things now that musicians are just being like robots. They come and they do what they have to do. There's a transaction and then it's over. So you imagine 5, 10 years of doing that, and then a devastation or something happens in your family, and you still got to play. You still got to make things work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take the time. We all got to take the time to make sure our spiritual and mental is in order, because if not, we will. And sometimes it causes you to have to pull back, to have to say no. I can't go to that 9 o'clock service. I can't go to that 10 o'clock. I have to be able to get myself together.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've had to do personally. I can only speak about my own experiences. You can make all the money in the world, but if you're crazy, you can't get your mind back. If you lose you cannot. You can always make a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to that, sometimes that stuff is like you're coping with something. You're trying to numb a pain, and you're not dealing with it. So, and a lot of musicians don't want to talk about mental health. We don't want to talk about things that are destroying us silently. But I feel like we should be looking out for each other, because it's very important these days to make sure our mental is in order.
Right. Absolutely.
So we may not have to get high before service starts, or get drunk after service starts, or we may be able to use other mechanisms that cope with the things that we are dealing with privately. Because I know all of you have had to play through pain, play through losing a loved one, play through whatever you're going through, and the people don't never know what's going on. They just see you providing a service. They don't know what you're dealing with in your mind.
Right. Right. And someone said musicians need an outlet to refresh. I'm trying to say, to refresh their mind and soul. And another musician is saying most musicians that are playing for these churches are not members, so it's hard to pastor them when they are members somewhere else, or not members at all. Yeah.
I would say that that's true, and at the same time, I'm starting to realize that my call to pastor is not a call to pastor only people who sign up to my particular church.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that it makes it that even for someone who's not on your roster, and I do understand what that statement is, and I'm not disagreeing with it. It is challenging.
Right.
Because there's some musicians that don't want to be pastored, if we be honest.
Yes.
They just want their need met. And they feel like they have a good sense of control of the rest of their life. I just need you to pay what I need you to pay, and then I'll be good. But if you can get a space in anyone's life, depending on your sphere of influence, it becomes the responsibility to even pastor outside of that. There's people that I probably wouldn't hire because of their lifestyle, but I would still talk to them about their lifestyle and what they're doing because I actually care. And I
Right.
would talk to them about some things that are going on, and it's really dealing with the person, dealing with the individual, you know. But yeah, there, if you're able to be let in,
Right.
you know, and you, I also say this, don't allow for the way it seems like society is to trick you into not interfering in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning that one of the languages of love that we don't talk about, we call it judgment,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not judgment, it's confrontation. Confrontation is part of the love language. People like to think that love is just acceptance of everything.
Yeah.
But sometimes being in that role, in that leadership role, means
Right.
you need to confront.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, even though he didn't judge the woman at the well, he confronted her about her personal life. He
Yeah.
talked to her. Like, so it's like really getting in spaces sometimes that people may be a little bit apprehensive and defensive, but allowing the Spirit of God to lead you on even how to approach
Mm-hmm.
addressing things and coming
Mm-hmm.
into that space.
Yeah.
And if someone puts up the block, you won't have to let it be said that you made the assumption that they didn't want you in. You actually tried, and they still block.
Right.
Jesus is trying, and they're blocking. He's
Mm-hmm.
standing at the door and knocking. So we got to do the same thing.
That's
I
right.
love you,
Yes,
Tuff.
sir. Woo! Take your
Mhm.
time, Doc.
That is true.
Enjoy your
Lastly, before we close, there is a subject. People want to know what is the difference between a minister of music and maybe a director of music. What is the
Ooh,
difference between a minister of music and a director of music, Brother Tubbs?
Mm. Well, through all of my travels and different church services throughout my
Mm-hmm.
37 long years, I think it
Mm-hmm.
depends on the church, the understanding of the pastor, the
Mm-hmm.
organization, because it may differ depending on what they want and what they understand. You know, some pastors went to seminary and different biblical colleges and set up their church uh, according to the schooling system, and others set up their church according to their grandmom and granddad. So, for the most part, the director of music has more of a office position and is
Mm-hmm.
more uh, just setting up systems and policies from a more uh, official standpoint. And the
Mm-hmm.
minister of music is more in the forefront in working the, uh, the vision of the church and the pastor. But
Mm-hmm.
depending on the church, it could be the other way around.
Right.
And every church doesn't have the same positions and desires for
Mm-hmm.
those musicians. So it really depends on every circumstance and every place.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Pastor Oatman?
I think a minister of music is really, to me, depending on, like Tubb said, depending on how your church is set up, um, can deal with a lot of in your musical department, the spiritual word aspect, making sure the vision is in line with the pastor. Whatever songs you choose, praying and making sure it's the right song for the house and not the
Mm-hmm.
billboard hits. Being in tune spiritually with your church, knowing how to serve your congregation, um, and also serving your musical staff.
Yeah.
They need prayer. They need, more than just teaching a song or teaching music. Be a
Mm-hmm.
support. mechanism. Give them the scriptures when they need. Pastor taught me everything you do when it comes to music ministry, always have a scripture base because people are going to listen to those scriptures.
Yeah.
So the music deals with those areas.
Mhm.
A director of music can deal in that, but more so in that term for me and what I've seen, directors of music kind of like oversee the staff. They're more on the administrative, and the music
Right.
can be administrative as well.
Yeah.
But they're
Mhm.
more mechanical when it comes to dealing with the structure of the music department, the band, and all, and laying out all the pieces and making sure that they all work together. You know,
Yeah.
but I think as a minister of music, you should feel like you're called to the ministry, accept the calling, work in the calling, and constantly study and grow spiritually in line with the vision of who you're serving, with the pastor of that house. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Pastor Troy?
Well, it does vary, like the gentlemen are saying. I mean, we even have churches now that have moved to executive pastors of worship.
Yes.
And, you have different. And then I grew up in an era where there wasn't a minister of music. There was a choir director.
That's
And
right.
then there were musicians. The choir director was in charge.
Right.
But now I would say one of the most general things that I've seen, even though there are variances, the most general that I've seen is the minister of music is the person that is responsible for the direction of the entire music department. Generally, those descriptions have looked like, when I've seen them at time, like responsible for picking appropriate material that aligns to the vision of the church and the culture of worship at the church, that actually builds teams, builds systems, build choirs, depending on if a church still is in the choirs. But everything that supports the lifeblood of that ministry, be in alignment with the vision of the pastor, can coordinate music for all services, for all needs, funerals, conferences, whatever. The music director was usually a term in general terms when I came around it for the band director. It would be the person that would be in charge of the other instrumentalists, making sure, if you had a full band, making sure that they got the material, that they, if there was a separate band rehearsal, that they did that and that they were prepared for whatever was coming up. And so those were the two components that would work hand in hand. Of course, these terms do mean some different things in some different places, but that was the general most.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very, very good. Well, I want to thank you for being here on tonight. And thank you so much for taking the time out. And I'm sure a lot of questions were answered and it sparked a lot of interest on tonight. And I know there are many pastors that are watching and some that will watch the replay. So I want to take this time to thank my guests for being here tonight, Richard Tubbs Smith, Pastor William Oatman Jr., and Pastor Troy Chambers. Thank you all so much, because I know you're busy and I know you had a full day on Sunday. So I thank you so much for spending time with Real Talk on tonight. And I also want to thank those that are watching and those that will watch the replay. I want to thank you so much for being a part of Real Talk. And we will see you again soon. And continue to follow us on my YouTube page, as well as my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, I should say, my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. So continue to follow, and we're going to say good night. Any closing remarks before we leave from anybody?
Pray without ceasing. Good God.
Amen. That's always good.
This conversation will never be over, but if we keep engaging with thought and even with empathy, it can always evolve.
Yes, that's good. Pastor Oatman?
We can always learn from each other, learn from each other's mistakes. Nobody has done it right. Nobody has gotten it all right. So if we are just honest with each other, we can help each other and be a better community when it comes to musicians and when it comes to pastors. Everybody has to humble themselves so that we can grow together as the body of Christ.
That's right. And I hope to be able to do a part 2 to continue, because I think it's so good to have this kind of conversation that we have. We may bring on a couple of more people to be a part of this, but I think it's good because we have a lot of new pastors that are starting out pastoring and some that have not as of yet and want to know. I get a lot of questions about it, and I think it's good to be able to bring it to the platform. So I want to say thank you to the gentlemen that were here tonight. God bless you, and I will see you again. And those that are watching, thank you so much for being a part of Real Talk with Cindy, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you so very much for tuning in to Real Talk with Cindy Barber. We hope you have been informed and inspired by the conversation on this evening. You can contact Cindy Barber on Instagram at CindyRBarber04. You can email her at ms.cindybarber@gmail.com or the YouTube channel at Cindy R. Barber. You can also contact Cindy about having your event advertised on Real Talk with Cindy Barber. Cindy looks forward to you joining her next week for another informative conversation right here on Real Talk with Cindy Barber. Until then, have a great evening.